Every character, location, or experience you've read about in my crime fiction novels holds a piece of reality. I'm Helen Taylor. Welcome to the story behind my stories, the video podcast where crime fiction meets my authentic experience. Here, we delve into the real-life inspirations and intimate stories that shaped my novels. Discover how my everyday encounters, adventures, and travels translate into tales as gripping as they are genuine. The story behind my stories goes behind the words on the page to reveal the backstory that inspires my writing. Hit follow or subscribe and ensure you're part of this journey. Hi, welcome to the next episode. So we left the last one that I just left Charm from that week with Paul, trying to heal his hand and everything. Came back to the UK, went back to work, continued life as normal. I had always wanted to do a safari. That'll be another book. But I had booked in the September. I went out to sort out Paul in the June of 2002, and in September I had booked a safari in Zimbabwe with a safari operator company. And my boss, my company that I worked for at the time, was looking to make me cancel that. So, because there was a big project going live, and they were going to cover the cost of me having to cancel. Anyway, I think it was beginning of August, the safari tour operator cancelled my safari for September, purely due to the troubles that were going on then in Zimbabwe at the time. So I didn't tell my boss or the company that I worked for that had been cancelled, and I booked flights to go back to Thailand. I don't know why, I just had this urge that I wanted to go back there. I really missed it when I came home. So I flew off out to Thailand in the September, and that was for 2 weeks, and Paul was still there. He had properly healed by then. It was great to see how well he was, and he had moved to those little bungalows that I told you about, on the left side of Charm, which were literally like a shed on stilts. He'd moved to there. I spent some time with him, and I spent some time exploring the island, going into Tong Salar. There was a full moon party that took place while I was there that time, but I didn't go. You see, Hadrian had never been my my sort of thing. It was, I didn't smoke dope, I didn't do any sort of drugs. It wasn't my thing at all, and the full moon party was very involved in that, so we say. But I did go out on a Saturday night to Hadrian, so then I could see the fire eaters, the fire walkers, and get a taste of what it might be like. In Thailand you can buy buckets, and they're like cocktails, but in a bucket. Not a giant bucket like you might mop the floors with, but a small bucket like a kid has to play on a beach with. So the bucket, they would fill it with ice. Then you'd get a quart of Thai whiskey, a can of Coke, a couple of cans of Coke, and the Thai Red Bull. And Thai Red Bull, it comes in little medicine bottles, not in a can like we do. And I don't remember the actual thing and whether it might have been anecdotal, but it was it's supposedly 20 times stronger than the Red Bull you can get here. And a couple of straws. And so you'd buy a bucket, and a bucket would be probably literally maybe £5, really not a lot of money. So yeah, I spent those couple of weeks at Charm and exploring. Like I say, one day I met Mug in those 2 weeks, and I'd chatted with him a couple of times. He had invited me to join him and his friends. One was a policeman, one was another teacher at the school, I think. One owned a boat. I don't know if he was a fisherman or not. And they every evening in the restaurant sat in front of the TV, Mug and his friends, all eating almost like a tapas sort of thing, lots of little dishes. They didn't sit down so much and eat a Thai curry or a main meal like that, but some clams and some vegetable dishes, and 8, 9, 10 little dishes of things. And every night I'd do that. Then they'd sit there drinking Chang, and then they'd go on to the Thai whiskey. And I didn't eat with them, but I'd sat and had a drink with them on one occasion. And I'd met Lek, who was his wife, and she had triplets. And I'd spent a little bit of time, chatting with her. She probably spoke the most English that was... I had to think about less talking to her. And otherwise it was, lots of backpackers through Charm. And I had a relaxing week. It was very enjoyable. About the beginning, I think, of the second week, Paul came to my bungalow, which was again one of these stone-built ones along the side facing the restaurant. And he'd said that Mug, the night before when his friends had gone, he'd been talking to Paul, and he'd said that he'd always had this dream of offering pony trekking into the jungle on the island. Mug, I think I might have said before, had always lived on the island. His Charm Beach had been his family for a long time. So he'd always had this dream of doing pony trekking into the jungle, but he didn't obviously have the time as a headmaster at the school, or the desire to mix. I mean, he had Liam, as I said before, running Charm Beach. He didn't have the time or the desire necessary to mix with Farangs, which is what the Thais called foreigners. And so whilst he had this dream, and he also said that he had a piece of land that he would build the stables and run the pony tracking from. So he asked Paul if Paul would run it for him. Obviously, Paul had been there for 9-10 months at that point, had stayed when he'd been injured, and had stayed, at Charm the whole time. So Mug asked him, and Paul was very, I don't do anything bigger than me. I just don't. So no, I'm not getting involved with horses. I've never ridden a horse. I'm just, no. He wasn't going to do it. He said, but you should talk to Helen, because Helen does do horses. Helen had a horse when she was younger. She rides, and she could do it for you. She's also a business head, etc. So Paul asked me to talk to Mug about this. So I did. I sat down with Mug, and Lek sat with us so that she could help in translating and getting him to understand, and translating for me so that I could understand exactly what he was talking about. And we met several times over the next few days and talked about this as a possibility. It's funny because I don't remember ever not planning to do that, but I had a good job with people relying on me back home, and also very personally, my dad had been diagnosed with cancer 2 years previous, and I wasn't going to be out of the country. He'd been given 5 years at most. We were now 2.5, 3 years in. So I talked with them. They asked about the possibility of me coming and running this business, setting it up. And I don't remember when I made the decision. I do remember coming home, and when I got home, there was a fireman strike. I'd never known firemen go on strike, and that was a big thing for me. These firemen were only earning like £20,000 a year, running into burning buildings, saving people, and I was earning 4 or 5 times that. At the time, the company that I worked for on a consultancy basis, I was out working for one of the big telecoms companies. I'm not sure what I can say and can't say. So I was spending my time being paid that much, checking that the colour of their logo looked right on multiple different smartphones, and smartphones literally had just come out, and so they were very, very basic in comparison to what you can do on the phone now. So I really struggled with that, the life-saving, massive commitment and just awesome job that firemen do, and me being paid loads more than them to check the colour on a screen is right. I can see from the telecoms company's perspective that colour, that branding and everything is incredibly important to them, and they're prepared to pay for that, and we are talking public sector, private sector, etc. But it didn't sit right with me. It just didn't. And now, looking back 20 years later, 25 years almost, it's how the universe works, how the universe does things, gives you things. But at the time, I was just going through life. But now I know that the universe gives you these things, and it's up to you whether you take them, use them, do them, etc. And it was giving me this opportunity and showing me how disillusioned I had become working in IT, when there was this massive contrast between the fireman and my job. So tie that up with me in my own personal life. My mental health wasn't the best. I felt the need to get away, which now again I can look back in hindsight and feel that it was a bit of a case of running away. But then tie that up with this opportunity to head out to Thailand and build a business out there, living much cheaper. And then there was my dad. So I had a long conversation with my dad about it. My dad had always grabbed opportunities like this, and he was absolutely adamant that I wasn't to turn down this sort of opportunity, this once in a lifetime opportunity for him, when I could come back and he would still be here, and he could write to me, he could talk on the phone. He just asked that I come back to go on holiday with him in the June. And so I did. I decided, yep, I'm going to go back to Thailand and do this pony trekking into the jungle with Mug and Lek. So I resigned from my job, who wanted to immediately pull me out of the client that I was with and put me back in the office doing boring stuff. But they first of all had decided that they were going to offer me a pay rise, that they wanted me to take a sabbatical, didn't want to lose me, wanted me to take a sabbatical. It went up to board level to see if they would break the rules for me, because they had 3 rules. That you had to have worked for the company for 2 years to take a sabbatical, you had to give 6 months notice to take a sabbatical, and the maximum you could take was 6 months. And by that point, I'd only been working for the company for 18 months. I wanted to go in January, and this was October, and I wanted to go for a year. They said that they would break 2 of the rules for me, but not all 3. So I resigned, even with the pay rise, because I'd made the decision. I'd got past that point, and so any pay rise they'd offered me, let alone a £20,000 one, I wasn't going to take, because if I was worth that, I should have been paid it. But I'd already made the decision. No, I was going to Thailand for a year, and that was what I'd agreed with my dad. I would go for a year. I would come back in the June to go on holiday with him for 2 weeks, and I would use that year with Mug to set up the pony trekking, set up the stables, the business, and train a manager that could then run the business when I came home for however long that might be, until my dad left us. So that was the plan. And I was then in communication a lot with Mug and Lek, over the phone, via email, through Paul. As in those days it was still dial up, and you paid to do emails, no email and things like that on your phone. And we agreed how much I would contribute financially to the business. And one of the things that Paul said in one of his emails was, you have been here now twice. In Thailand, Thai time. So bring your laptop and do something else while this is ticking along. And I will tell you next time what happened then. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.